morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Welcome to the first video of 2023. Today, we're going to be talking about a very cool topic, and that is going to be 762 by 39 in a true AR platform, and how to get it about as reliable as it can. But before we get into the video, if you'd like to help me out personally, you can, of course, like, share, and subscribe. Do all the things that the algorithm likes, as that is very helpful to the channel. And also go ahead and comment "Thanks, Kevin" in the comments down below. Now, there's also Subscribestar, which is basically a pro to a Patreon, and there's also my website, which in theory has some stuff in stock. Now, full disclosure on the Young Manufacturing bolt that's going to be the centerpiece of this video. I did not pay for it whatsoever. It was actually sent in by a kind viewer of the channel, Kevin, the same gentleman who lent me the PWS Mark 111 some time ago. So again, thanks, Kevin. Now, when it comes to Young Manufacturing, I don't have any sort of relationship with them whatsoever. They've never contacted me. I've never contacted them. They don't know who I am, and I barely know who they are. Now, getting into the system as a whole, what we're talking about today is 7.62 by 39 in an AR15, and not an AR15 hybrid like the Mutant and the CMMG stuff or some of the other PSA AK47s. Not a hybrid system, but a true AR15 chambered in 7.62 by 39. Now, for those of you who don't know, the main issue with chambering an AR15 in 7.62 by 39 doesn't really have to do with the barrel or the recoil system, but actually with the bolt itself. So the 220 Russian, which is the parent case of the 7.62 by 39, and of course the 7.62 by 39, have a much thicker case than your standard 5.56. So what that means is that you need to remove quite a bit of material from the bolt face to accept the larger case. Now that's going to create a couple of issues. One, the rim of the bolt itself is actually going to be much more prone to cracking. It's going to be a lot more brittle because you have to remove like 40-50% of the material there to accept the much larger case. Now, on top of that, 7.62 by 39 has about 20%, 25% more energy than 5.56. So not only is it a slightly more powerful round, then on top of that, you have a lot less material in the bolt face. It can cause some issues. Now, the second weak point on the bolt is actually going to be the much more critical one, and that is going to be on the extractor. Now, most companies, when they're making a 7.62 by 39 bolt, they take off a lot of material from the face of the bolt, of course, to accept a larger case, and then they also remove a lot of material from the extractor so that it fits on there properly. Now, in terms of my personal experience with 7.62 by 39 and 6.5 Grendel with AR-15s, probably somewhere between 10 and 20,000 rounds, total rounds on AR-15s chambered in 7.62 by 39, and I've sheared no less than 6 extractors. Some of them lasted a couple thousand rounds, some of them lasted 500 rounds, some of them lasted, I think, just a couple magazines. So the extractors are by far and away going to be the weakest part of the system. Now, this is a Young Manufacturing bolt that currently I have somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 rounds on, and the extractor is holding up just fine. I believe this is the longest running extractor that I've had. I've had a couple other standard 7.62 by 39s make it above 2,000 rounds, but as far as highest round count, I do want to say that this Young Manufacturing bolt and extractor have the highest round count without a failure. Now, getting into specifics on the Young Manufacturing bolt, well, I would like to get into the specifics, but unfortunately the website is very vague. So this bolt that we have here, this is their 7.62 by 39 bolt. This one here is hard chrome coated. Unfortunately, they don't sell this version by the bolt only. You have to buy the complete bolt carrier group to get the hard chrome version. And on the nitride listing that they have on their website for the 7.62 by 39, it doesn't really list any specs on it. It doesn't even tell me the material choice. So I don't know if it's 8620, 9310, Carpenter 158, so on and so forth, so you and I can guess about that all day long. What we do know about it, though, is that it is a standard profile bolt, except, of course, for the bolt face and the extractor. Now, this is a hard chrome version, which the finish over the 3,000-4,000 rounds that I put on it has held up extremely well. Chrome is about the best coating you can get for a bolt carrier group in general. It's one of the best linings you can do for a barrel. Overall, it's just a very, very good coating, and they've done a good job with it. Now, before we get into why this bolt is going to be so much better than your standard 7.62 by 39 bolt in terms of longevity on the extractor, we will at least talk about the machining. The machining work itself is fine. There are definitely some rough patches on the extractor itself and in between each of the bolt lugs where it looks like it did not get a finishing pass. They also kind of mangled the roll pin for the ejector. Overall, not a big deal. It's just not quite aesthetically pleasing. Now, very nice on the back lugs. They're all machined at like a 45-degree angle, much larger than you would find on like a 5.56 bolt. So they did much larger relief cuts there to probably make it a little bit smoother on the unlock process, take a little bit more stress off of the bolt in general, because again, it is a hotter cartridge. In general, you're going to be dealing with a little bit more recoil. Now, getting into the bolt face itself, the bolt face is going to have a much thinner wall than like a 5.56 bolt, just because again, they have to remove a lot of material to fit that 7.62 by 39 case into the actual bolt itself. Now, when we get into the extractor, the most important component on a 7.62 by 39 bolt in terms of reliability, well, it looks shockingly similar to a 5.56 extractor. Now, I have had people comment on my videos in the past on 7.62 by 39 and an AR15, and they say that the way to get a reliable extractor on a 7.62 by 39 is just to throw in a 5.56 extractor, because the 5.56 extractor has a lot more material on it, because of course they're not removing material to fit that 7.62 by 39. Now, there are some problems with this, and I did actually test this theory. So I did actually run a couple magazines with a straight up 5.56 extractor in the 7.62 by 39 bolt, and it did extract perfectly fine. However, you will notice that extraction and ejection is quite a bit weaker, because the 5.56 gets enough force on the case rim to get it out of the chamber. However, it's not super convincing in its extraction. It does work, and I'm sure that the longevity of the extractor will be very good. However, if you get a very hot chamber or a little bit more sticky cases, depending on what ammunition type you're using, you could get failures to extract, because that 5.56 extractor is not quite getting enough grip. It doesn't have quite a big enough cutout in it to fully grab a 7.62 by 39 case. Now, the flip side of that is that it's going to be a lot more durable, but the bad side is that it might not be 100% reliable in terms of actually extracting that case. What Young Manufacturing has done in their 7.62 by 39 bolt is they have retained some of the original geometry of a 5.56 extractor while cutting a slightly taller cut for it to grab onto the rim of a 7.62 by 39 and extract it. So if you compare it directly to a 5.56 extractor, it's going to look just a tiny bit taller, but it has about 90 to 95% of the material still there. Then if you compare it to a 6.5 Grendel or a 7.62 by 39, because those are type 1, type 2 extractors, I don't need to get into the weeds about that. But then you'll see a large difference between those two extractors, in that the 6.5 Grendel 7.62 by 39 will have a lot more material removed. The actual claw itself is going to have a lot less material on it. So what they've done with this bolt is kind of do a hybrid system that is much closer to a 5.56, but it still gets a full grip on the case of a 7.62 by 39. Now, personally, I think that's a very good approach. You're going to get close to the best of both worlds. It's probably still not going to be as strong as just a basic 5.56 extractor, just by virtue that the 5.56 extractor has more material there, and it's also dealing with a slightly lower load in terms of power. Now, the 7.62 by 39 basic extractors are going to be the worst. They're going to have the least material, dealing with high pressure, that sort of thing. The Young Manufacturing bolt splits the difference much closer to the 5.56 than it does to the 7.62 by 39 or 6.5 Grendel, meaning that where you might top out at 2,000 or 3,000 rounds on a 7.62 by 39 extractor, with the Young Manufacturing hybrid extractor, you might get 10,000 rounds. You might get 15,000 rounds. I don't have enough ammo on hand to test that. And again, this is still a sample size of 1, but at least we can see in theory the way that they've designed it, because they have done some changes from a standard 5.56 extractor. It's not just a standard 5.56 extractor. They've made enough changes to it to allow it to work better, to extract better with 7.62 by 39, while still retaining most of the strength of a 5.56 extractor. And that is kind of alleviating the biggest weak point of a 7.62 by 39 bolt. Now, the bolt face itself is still going to be a lot weaker and more prone to cracking again because they do have to remove a lot of material there to fit the 7.62 by 39 case. However, the main weak point of the extractor has mostly been fixed. Now, the way that other companies do it, like the CMMG Mutant and I believe the AR47 from Palmetto State Armory, I could be wrong about that one, but I know for a fact in the Mutant, they start with an AR10 bolt and then add material so that it will fit a 7.62 by 39. So it is just a huge, beefy bolt that they have on the CMMG Mutant. Now that gives you more reciprocating mass, but of course the strongest bolt possible. So to get it in a true AR15 package, I do think the Young manufacturing bolt is the way to go. Now, I've always gotten people asking me if I'm personally going to build a 7.62 by 39 line of upper receivers for my website and sell them, and if I do, I will certainly be using the Young manufacturing bolts. Fortunately, the nitride bolts are only like 80 bucks, which might sound kind of expensive for just a bolt, but it is a very high quality bolt, and it does have a redesigned extractor that is enhanced in terms of its strength and durability versus a standard 7.62 by 39. So if you already have a 7.62 by 39, you've broken an extractor, or you're just not sure about it in general, an $80 upgrade for better peace of mind, so on and so forth, is not a bad way to go. Now, unfortunately, as I mentioned, as of right now anyways, they're not selling the hard chrome 7.62 by 39 bolts by themselves. Then again, the finish on this one here is held up just flawlessly. The finish itself is perfect. The machining, not quite so good. There's little things here and there that I don't quite like about it from a finish or an aesthetics perspective that don't really matter. But again, the hard chrome coating itself has held up perfectly. Now, because I always get questions about it, we are going to talk about how I make my 7.62 by 39 ARs reliable. There are basically 3 or 4 different things that you kind of need to do to every 7.62 by 39 AR to make them reliable. Number 1 is actually going to be an enhanced firing pin. If you don't have an enhanced firing pin, which has the shoulder pushed back a little bit further so you get a little bit deeper depth, is that if you don't have one, you're going to get a lot of light primer strikes unless you're using a very heavy trigger spring, and very heavy trigger springs are not fun. They, of course, result in very heavy triggers, so on and so forth. So I would recommend an enhanced firing pin and a trigger of decent quality. At least you don't want a super light trigger, something that's just not going to get them to ignite at all. With an enhanced firing pin, the next upgrade is probably going to be an extractor upgrade, like on the Young manufacturing bolt. Unfortunately, you have to buy the entire bolt, but I do think that it is a worthwhile upgrade if you need that to be 100% reliable. If it's a home defense gun, truck gun, duty gun, so on and so forth, I would only use it in that situation if it had a Young manufacturing bolt installed. Now, as far as the carrier goes, I honestly don't really care too much as long as it's of sufficient quality, grade 8 fasteners, properly staked, so on and so forth. It's going to do just fine. The bolt is going to be much more important in a 7.62 by 39. Now, getting into the barrel doesn't really matter too much because I'm going to recommend running an adjustable gas block basically 100% of the time. We want to relieve as much pressure off of the bolt as we can, so we're going to mitigate the gas coming from up front. And then also in the back, we have an H3 buffer. That is how I tune all of my 7.62 by 39 ARs, because I want that bolt moving as slow as it can to, again, take as much pressure and stress and wear off of the extractor as possible. Even on something like the Young manufacturing bolt, you're still going to be experiencing more pressure, wear and tear than you would in a 5.56. I want to say the average 7.62 by 39 case has like 1,300 foot-pounds of energy, and the 5.56 is like 1,100, maybe 1,200 on the high end. So you are dealing with a little bit of a hotter round in 7.62 by 39. Now, the barrel that I have in this gun right here has a lot of rounds on it, probably 10,000 rounds on this barrel specifically. This is a 10.5-inch carbine length barrel, very, very heavy barrel from Bear Creek Arsenal. This one here has a very cheap adjustable gas block on it. Now, one thing about Bear Creek Arsenal barrels is that over time they will swell, so I cannot get this gas block off. It will absolutely not come off unless I hit it with like a mallet or something like that. It is completely one piece with the barrel at this point, because again, when Bear Creek Arsenal barrels, or at least some of their older barrels, I've had 2 of their barrels do this, when they get above like 5,000 rounds, they start to swell up, and they will no longer accept a new gas block, and you won't be able to get the old gas block off. Now, that being said, even for this fairly high round count on the barrel, it is still extremely accurate. It'll post 1 MOA groups with crappy ammunition. Again, it is a very, very heavy barrel, and I've used it for a long time, and because it's so accurate, I don't really see the need to swap it out. Now, again, on the barrel, if you want a lighter barrel, I think Faxon makes some lighter 7.62 by 39s. You're going to want to throw on an adjustable gas block to reduce the gas as much as possible, as much as you can, while still maintaining a reliable system. Because again, that additional pressure, that additional wear and tear is going to take a toll on your extractors and overall make them a lot less reliable. When your extractor goes down, the gun is basically done until you get the bolt out, put it in a new extractor, and then you can continue on your way. So because the extractor is a very vital part of the gun, and even with the young bolt, I'm still not sold on it being as strong as a 5.56 extractor. I want to take as much wear and tear, as much pressure off of it as I can, slow down the system in the front and the back to make sure it's one as smooth as possible so I can shoot it and have fun shooting it, but also make sure that that bolt lasts as long as possible. Now, the last thing that we need to talk about to make your AR15 chambered at 7.62 by 39 reliable is going to be magazines, and the answer is Duramag in every scenario. Now, I'm going to have a detailed video on that comparing ProMag, ASC, Duramag, Elander, and the Unimag as well for 7.62 by 39. That'll be its own dedicated video, but if you're looking, hey John, what's the best magazine for 7.62 by 39? The answer is going to be Duramag. They're not perfect, but they are the best by far and away. So, with all of that out of the way, guys, let me know what you guys think of 7.62 by 39 in an AR-15 in general. Let me know what your tips and tricks are for making them as reliable as possible. What you think of the young manufacturing bolt that I will continue to test. I've had it for some time now, put a lot of rounds on it, and I will continue to put more rounds on it, as this is a fun gun to shoot, and fortunately I do have a lot of ammo laying around, and it's fairly cheap. So, with all of that out of the way, guys, thank you so much once again for watching. I will see you in the next one. Peace off.